This is fairly informal today. We have some 13 speakers, but we wanted to build in time that there's lots of questions for discussions and everything. Hopefully everybody's nose is a little bit better than some of ours. I think with winter being fairly long, all of a sudden everything started growing in one day. So we're all sniffling. But I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the AGL, Allied Geophysical Lab. And fortunately we had the wonderful spring symposium with the GSH, and we're happy to say that the GSH is supporting a lot of work here. And Fred was the honoree, but Fred got things all rolling in the late 70s, and we've tried to keep up many of his good traditions since. Just going over today, so quick facility moment. There are men's facilities just outside the door to the right and left, and there are ladies' facilities just on your left side. There actually is a scheduled siren to go off at 2 o'clock today, so we don't have to go anywhere at all. But aside from that, we're all trusting everything will be safe. Although it's certainly something to consider. You probably saw the fire last week. I was sitting in my building watching it and then started taking pictures. And if you haven't seen the YouTube video of the dramatic rescue, log on and see it. It's real life. It's better than Hollywood, and it's a happy ending too. So, but today we've got a sample of a lot of the good work that's going on at U of H. So here's how we're outlined. We've got a couple of hours the first session, and we'll have a mixture of experiences. Some of us who've been working in the field for a few decades now, and then some of our students who are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and getting right after work. Then we'll have a little break. We've set up a lot of our equipment, and the university and a lot of our corporate folks in town have been very good to us in trying to build up acquisition abilities as well as our processing abilities. So we've got lots of serving equipment, ultrasonics, some nodals, sensors. We're just building into the marine world. We've got a boomer. We just acquired side scanning sonar, so we're building a marine segment into our whole program. And lots of other GPR and gravity and lots of equipment for you to have a look at if you haven't seen some. We are trying to get our students experience with all of our traditional geophysical and advanced geophysical measurements, as well as all the processing systems that we can manage to support, and then all the data that we can bring in so that they've got good exposure to the beautiful richness that geophysics is offering right now. I was mentioning we grew up with total stations here, and here's a little laser theodolite, but you've probably seen now the LiDAR systems, and we were thrilled yesterday to be getting a full laser system. The new LiDAR systems are just exactly like this, except they do 1 million measurements a second or a minute. They're just fabulous in what they can do. So that's another whole world that we're starting to probe. Great. Howie mentioned where we are. Even when I'm assembling this, I think, wow, if we could just get all these guys in the room every once in a while, it would be just so shockingly good. But here are the faculty who are at geophysics, and we're really thrilled to have, I think, probably one of the top few assemblages of faculty and adjuncts and supporters anywhere in the world. There's just a fabulous array of expertise here, including a lot of our adjuncts who really, really help us out enormously. Edith, Colin, the Pete's, Doug Emmett, and Bartok. Plus, we've just we're adding and bringing back people, and Howie was just saying that we've issued an offer for another geophysicist today. So we're hoping to bring on at least 1 or 2 more exploration geophysics faculty. Now, in a little bit more detail, what AGL is doing, it's a bigger group. It's often good to focus on strictly one thing. We're an anisotropy group, or we're a multi-component group, or we're a borehole group, or we're an inversion group, or we're a microseismic group. And that's wonderful, and that's very supportable and understandable. Our opportunity is so big that we have trouble just sticking with one thing. We've got way too many students. I have about 22 myself, grad students, and so we are focusing on an array of activities. But what the overview is, we're exploiting the full elastic wave field, that's number one, and we're trying to make pictures of resource relevance. So our real focus is exploit the total wave field and use it to say something important, make an important picture about resource relevant stratigraphy. Now, how do we do that? And there are lots of different ways with Venn diagrams. We can divide this up to show what we're really doing. But we have inputs. In the sense, we have our measurement inputs. And one great way to do that is via physical modeling, or robotic modeling, or scale modeling. And what we do is typically we use ultrasonic sources, 1 megahertz sources and receivers, and build models that are interesting and can inform us of real situations. Now, we do this because getting real data, of course, is expensive, it's hard to get, and typically you can't go back. In my own PhD defense that had a lot of BSP and field data, and one of the examiners said, "Can you go back and repeat that experiment?" And I said, "No, we can't. It's in an oil field, and we got lucky once." And he said, "Well, this is totally inadmissible. It has to go to your PhD. If it's not repeatable, it's inadmissible." We fixed that, but it was thank God that TK Codd from ARCO at the time was on my defense too. And he actually promised that we would go back to that oil field and reshoot the BSP, which of course we couldn't. But this gets around some of that. We can repeat all these experiments, and so it's very good science. And we've been pioneering some really interesting laser etched materials that were first done here. We're using 3D printed models, which were one of the earliest groups, I think, to actually exploit the 3D printers, the additive manufacturing technologies to actually, we printed a penny-shaped crack model, a real one. So booster toxos from 30 years ago always had penny-shaped cracks. Nobody could actually build one, but we have built one now. Thousands of penny-shaped cracks actually material, and this is because we can do 3D printing. So we're trying to understand a lot of the complicated field situations in the lab. And I'd like to introduce 3 people immediately. Anoop William. Anoop's our lab manager and data processing and data manager. Anoop's just over here. Dr. Nikolai good to see. Nikolai is doing all kinds of wonderful measurements in the lab with salt, with all kinds of materials. He has both a geology, a petrophysics, and a geophysics background. And Bob Wiley, Bob's back there too. Bob's been wonderful and held down the trenches for many, many years. And now he's actually teaching some of our near surface activity, and he's done wonderful measurements in the lab. So that's our lab. Many of our students go through the lab to get data to develop and test ideas and algorithms. Then field acquisition, and we believe that every geophysicist should spend some time making measurements. Even bigger than every scientist should make measurements, even if you're going to be the most theoretical in the world. Even Einstein, as we know, worked in the patent office and liked to go on hikes. So we've tried to build up a very detailed acquisition capability so that we can make all kinds of measurements and test all kinds of ideas. And again, we're one of the few groups in the world that has a Vibe system. We're very happy with Geospace. They donated 120 of their GSR nodes, which is one of the big revolutions in our seismic acquisition. And we do logging measurements. We've drilled 2 wells on the university's land south of the city, and we're using those quite a bit now for education and testing, 2 shallow wells, and in industry testing. And then again, we're just establishing a marine capability, and we'll be having our field school this year in Galveston, and we're going to be doing some offshore surveys. And Adi Geta, Adi is our technical manager with all of our equipment. Now in data processing, to manage and do something useful with all this data, of course, we have to analyze it. And we've tried to bring in all of the industry standard packages. Now, we really have one person to try to look after this. If you think of being a processing company, I don't know, Fred, how many guys do you have working?
Just Richard Kerr.
Oh, that's worth 6 other guys. So. But typically, it requires a whole IT group and data management group and everything else. We're trying to keep all this software, but up and running with licenses and everything. We have a lot of help from our good friends such as Ida Basel at Paradigm. As I mentioned at the symposium, there's some wonderful times where we get invited into some of the contractor shops, like over Christmas when there aren't as many people there, and we get to take over all the machines for a week or two, and that's where we get a lot of our work done. But Jay Christian is wonderful in his capabilities, trying to keep all of our software up and running. Then we spend a fair amount of time either acquiring our own data in a lot of different areas, and we try to get out every month or two to do some kind of surveying, typically just a mile or two seismic line or gravity or something like that. And we made lots of measurements. We also spend a fair amount of time with our industry colleagues and friends trying to get more expensive data sets. And as you know, this is a really key thing for us because the community wants experienced people who understand current problems. We can't do that unless people give us really these expensive data sets. And we've been really fortunate to work with some groups, Marathon, Hess, GeoPursuit, GeoKinetics, who have kindly given us major expensive 3D, multi-component 3D data sets, and then we work with those. So those are absolutely essential for us to try to educate people into what's current, as well as do significant research. So those data sets are really critical. And we spend a lot of time with agreements. We've got confidentiality classifications. All of our students sign confidentiality documents, they're industry standard, to work with these data. And Lee Chang is our go-to-it, Mr. Do Everything, from the field, running our systems to processing the data. So thank you to all of our staff, and thank you to everyone who's helped us in this. So again, just what are we trying to do? The 30,000-foot view is that we are highly motivated to try to make major contributions to exploration geophysics. That's our major goal. Now, how do we do that? Well, we try to get all of our ideas. We try to have our people at meetings, reading journals, talking, going to breakfasts. So we try to get all these ideas. We acquire and create data. We try to write algorithms, software. And as we flow through, we try to present it, write it up, publish. And then the most important technology transfer is the students graduating and go work. So that's really the flow. Now, what in general are we doing science-wise? It's really exploiting the full elastic wave field. So P waves have got us over the last 100 years a long way, and that's great. But of course, we want to use the bound waves, the elastic waves, the attenuated situations. We try to push all of that. Plus, we need to integrate it with other measurements. And if we can understand, for example, migration with ground penetrating radar, that often teaches us something about migrating with seismic data. We need to do interpolations with GPR. That can give us an algorithm potentially with DSP. So we're working across the board. And we're mainly being in Houston, especially we're interested in energy and other resources. Our strategy is really experimental physics. We like to make measurements, we like to do surveys, we like to design, and we like to process with the best physics that we can get. But we're trying to always have an attachment to every student on every committee, an industry person, and then put this all in a team that's within the community of the professional community here, as well as our international community. So that's really the strategies that we use. Now, just to, for completeness, we're a little bit different than the industry because, of course, these are our major components. graphs. Number one is we are an educational institute. Some people say if you're not doing research, then you don't have anything to teach, and we sort of believe that. So the research is a key part of what we like to do. We want to be creative, and we need to be attached and collaborative. So this is really an overview of everything we're trying to do. Excuse me. Now this is a little bit busy, but I wanted just to put some of the highlights in the last year or so. We've made a number of major surveys, and this has been a lot of fun. It's been educational, and we use most of the data that we acquire in field camps in Montana, Utah, our facility at Lamarck, just south of the city, and then other international sites. We've acquired lots of data. Most of this finds its way into our courses and our theses and presentations, publications. Then a wonderful thing about being in Houston is we've got all of you nearby, and we love to come and visit. And we have have made a number of visits in the last few months. Halliburton, Dan Quinn is here. Dan. Halliburton's been especially generous to us with their time and their support, and we regularly go and visit Dan and group. Geospace is another company who's been very good to us, and with donations. We regularly have our folks go to Geospace. Incidentally, if you haven't been to Geospace's manufacturing, it's an unbelievable facility. And it reminded me this last time going through, they had all these beautiful ocean bottom sensors. And they were building these cables, and they just said casually, well, this is an order from the North Sea. It's a multi-component, ocean bottom, time-lapse multi-component sensing system. And the order was $120 million. And I thought, wow, that's pretty good for multi-component. So fabulous. This stuff is unsung and unsaid often, but our science is actually getting out there, and people are paying a lot for it. So Geospace has been wonderful too. Fairfield, also another local manufacturer, we regularly visit with them, and it's just examples of getting our students into the community and vice versa. So this is really an enriching environment for everyone here. We started the field camp, and we've had more than 100 students through our field camp so far. We've got about another 30 or 40 coming up in next month. Plus, we've expanded this to the industry with Nautilus and other companies, and we've started teaching field programs. Because when you hire students who are not from U of H, often they don't have any field experience. And companies have come to us, some of the majors, and said that we've got wonderful people, but they've never touched an instrument. So we're actively putting on field programs from 1 day to 1 week for industrial groups to help. Now we have spent quite a bit of time negotiating data with various companies, and thank you to Hess and Marathon and Geokinetics for providing us with some really excellent data. You'll have been seeing, I hope, some articles in the GSH Journal, and we trust that everybody's a GSH member. I've been really happy that we've been able to have an article per month, just a general interest article written primarily by the students. And we're trying to get them into writing and being part of the community. And so that's been coming along very well. Kind of evaluating how we're doing is very difficult. We're evaluated by typically what we publish and how much support we bring into the university, and then. But when we try to evaluate how programs are doing, it's a little tricky. But one of the ways we can try to do it is how competitive are our students out in the world. And I'm happy to say that things are good. We just finished third place. One of our AGL folks, third place here, and I think Fabiola is to be congratulated. She's up here. She was part of the IDA team. And then, to our great relief, we did come first and second in the SEG Gulf Challenge Bowl as part of the symposium. An AGL person was Azzy, who was part of that team. Now, as Howie mentioned, attached to AGL in the last 3 years, we've graduated over 50 masters and 15 PhDs. So it's just a huge number of very talented people have graduated. We're really proud of all of them. You can see some of them here. I saw Arcadius and some other folks who are former students come in, who've gone on to lead happy, profitable, useful lives, Arcadius?
Very much so, yes.
Beautiful. And we're always short of funds, and this has been part of my job in the last 3 months, especially intensely putting in proposals. And I'm happy to say that we're part now of $50 million of proposed work for 2014 through 19. Now there's some big centers, they're the Energy Frontier Research Centers. We're part of 2 of those proposals, DOE proposals, part of a $28 million drilling program in the Antarctic, and some other very major proposals. So we're hoping to be part of this and expand quite a bit. So that's a little bit what we have done. This is where we're going, again, across the spectrum. Acquisition is really exciting right now. The physics of vibration measurement are just really exciting. We've got a number of ideas that we're trying to develop, including distributed acoustic sources like sensing systems, like many people. We've got ideas for moving vibe systems, sensors in wheels, sweeps over and under land recording, so lots of things to test in the acquisition world. Because there's so much salt around, we're getting involved in a lot of different salt projects. All the way from Pierce Junction, not too far from here, to Bayou Corn, which is a major disaster in Louisiana, with collapse. Going down to the Hockey Mines, so there's lots of salt. We're really interested in the property bit. We've got some excellent work going on in surface waves and guided waves. We'll continue with that. Borehole microseismic, and of course our multi-component work. But what we'd also like to do is to continue to relate and collaborate and do joint work with our community here. And so in your package, and I hope everyone was able to pick up these guys. In your package, there should be a little questionnaire. And please, over the course of the next little bit, just perhaps write down for us what your interests are and how we can collaborate and get involved. Incidentally, the folder has lots of our theses and lots of information about what we've been up to and hopefully be useful to you. So we're interested in your feedback. These are the companies who've been our supporters over the last few years, and we thank all of them deeply for how they've been able to help us and how we hope that we can help them. And some of our good development folks have been teaching me a lot about going forward. And we're anxious to produce and have an impact, and we're going to ask you for help in doing so. And so we would love to have you join us in the consortium at AGL. Some companies like consortia, some would prefer to be involved in a different way. We've got lots of ways to set up joint research projects. We would love you to support some students. As Howie mentioned, we have about 140 grad students in geophysics, which as far as we know is the biggest in the world outside of China. So it's huge, and again, there's very little support available for master's students, and it's difficult for PhD students. So you can help us support students. We'd love to be able to do it. And then of course on NSM, you were able to contribute online. So you can just click and support. So we're asking you for your support so that we can continue on with this work and hopefully deliver a positive impact to all of you back. So I think there's tons of work to do in exploration of geophysics. This is a great place to do it. We've got an excellent team assembled, and we're looking forward to working with all of you.